The champagne glass shattered against marble with a sound like breaking bone. Isabella Hart didn't flinch. She'd learned not to, but the laughter that followed cut deeper than any falling crystal. Across the glittering ballroom of the Sinclair Grand Hotel, beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes, a young woman with a scar running from temple to jawline sat utterly alone at a table built for 12. Her father, Leonard Hart, CEO of Hart Industries and one of the most powerful men in the city, stood 30 feet away surrounded by shareholders and couldn't reach her. Not really. Not past the wall of whispers and turned shoulders that had followed her since she'd arrived. But someone else noticed. A waiter in a borrowed tuxedo, a man whose calloused hands had held rifles and infant bottles with equal care, a father who understood that the cruelest wounds are the ones that never bleed. Marcus Reed saw everything, and he was about to stop pretending he didn't. If this story speaks to you, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far Isabella's journey travels. And if you believe courage looks different than we've been told, hit that like button. Now, let me tell you what happened the night everything changed. The Sinclair Grand Hotel stood on Riverside Avenue like a monument to old money and older power. All limestone columns and brass fixtures polished until they caught the sunset and threw it back gold. Inside the Wellington Ballroom, 300 of the city's elite had gathered for the annual Hart Industries Gala, an event where business deals worth millions happened between the shrimp cocktail and the prime rib, where marriages were arranged over dessert wine, where careers lived and died based on who noticed you and who didn't. Isabella Hart had been noticed all night, just not the way anyone would want. She sat at table 7, her black evening gown expensive enough to feed a family for months. Her dark hair swept over one shoulder in an elegant cascade that her stylist had spent an hour perfecting. The dress was beautiful, the hair was flawless, and none of it mattered because the scar that ran from her left temple down across her cheekbone to her jaw held every eye that landed on her face. The accident had happened 3 years ago, a car wreck on a rainy November night that killed her mother and left Isabella with injuries that required 17 surgeries and more physical therapy than she could count. The doctors had done their best. The scar tissue was clean, the wound had healed well, they'd saved her eye and most of the nerve function in her face. She should be grateful, they told her. She was alive. But alive in what world? That was the question nobody answered. Is that Leonard Hart's daughter? The voice carried from the next table, pitched just loud enough to be heard. A woman in diamonds and Dior, her face tight from procedures that erased age, but not cruelty. Good Lord, what happened to her face? Car accident, I heard. This from her companion, a man in a tuxedo that probably cost more than Marcus Reed's monthly rent. Terrible shame. She was quite pretty before. Well, you can barely look at her now. Why on earth would Leonard bring her to something like this? Isabella's water glass was suddenly very interesting. She studied it like it held answers, watching condensation slide down the crystal in tiny rivers. Her father had asked her to come. Insisted, actually, in that way he had where suggestion and command blurred into something she couldn't refuse. It's important, Isabella. The company needs to see us united. You need to be seen. What he'd meant was, you need to stop hiding. What she'd heard was, you need to be brave enough to let them stare. Across the ballroom, Leonard Hart stood in a circle of shareholders, his silver hair immaculate, his Tom Ford tuxedo fitting like it had been born on him, which it basically had. His tailor had been dressing him for 20 years. He was laughing at something Richard Pemberton had said, but his eyes kept drifting to table 7. To his daughter, sitting alone at a table meant for an entire board of directors. He'd invited people to sit with her, specifically invited them. And somehow, mysteriously, every single person had found somewhere else to be. The waiter came by with champagne, and Isabella waved him off without looking up. She didn't drink anymore. Medication and alcohol were a bad combination, her doctors said, and besides, she needed to stay sharp at these things. Stay ready. You never knew when someone would say something that required a response, required you to smile and nod, and pretend your face didn't hurt from holding the expression. Pretend you didn't see the way their eyes snagged on your scar like it was a typo in an otherwise perfect sentence. Ladies and gentlemen, dinner will be served in 15 minutes. The announcement came from somewhere near the front, smooth and practiced, the kind of voice that narrated luxury. Please find your assigned seating. Isabella was already there, Had been for 20 minutes, watching people read the place cards at table 7, watching their faces shift from pleasant anticipation to carefully managed disappointment, watching them drift away to find the event coordinator and request a change. Some emergency, some conflict. So sorry, but could we possibly... Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from her father. You okay, sweetheart? She looked up, found him across the room. Their eyes met. She nodded, managed something that might pass for a smile from this distance. Fine, she texted back, just enjoying the atmosphere. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I'm proud of you for being here. The words should have helped. They didn't. Pride was something you earned through achievement, through accomplishment. She was just sitting in a chair. The bar for making Leonard Hart proud of his daughter had fallen so low it was practically subterranean. The music shifted, string quartet giving way to a live band setting up near the dance floor. A woman in a red dress that must have violated several laws of physics walked past Isabella's table, trailing expensive perfume and the kind of confidence that came from never having to question whether you belonged somewhere. She didn't even glance at table 7. Why would she? Nothing worth seeing there. Isabella checked her phone, 7:15. The gala ran until 11. 3 hours and 45 minutes to go. She could do this. She'd survived worse. In the kitchen, Marcus Reed was sweating through his rental tuxedo. Table 14 needs water refills, table 9 is asking about the vegetarian option, and someone at table 3 just sent back the salad because it has walnuts. And apparently we're supposed to be psychic about nut allergies, which Carlos, the head waiter, was reading from a tablet with the intensity of a general reviewing battle plans. Marcus, you've got section C, that's tables 7 through 12. Keep the drinks flowing, stay invisible, and for the love of everything, do not engage in conversation unless they ask you a direct question. Got it. Marcus grabbed a water pitcher, checked his reflection in the polished steel of the walk-in cooler. The tuxedo was borrowed from his cousin Raphael, who had 3 inches and 20 pounds on him, so the fit wasn't great. The bow tie was crooked. He'd tied it himself from a YouTube tutorial, and the result was more enthusiastic amateur than refined professional. But it was work. It paid. And Riley needed new school shoes, so here he was playing dress-up in the world of people who actually belonged in clothes like these. You good? Carlos had paused, was looking at him with something that might have been concern if they weren't so slammed. Yeah, man. I'm good. It's a lot, I know. These people, they act like we're furniture. Just remember, you're not here to be seen. You're here to make their experience seamless. Marcus nodded. He'd been invisible before. He'd worn camouflage in places where being seen meant being dead. Had learned to move through hostile territory without disturbing the dust. A ballroom full of rich people? That was nothing. He pushed through the double doors into the Wellington ballroom, and the noise hit him like a wave. 300 people in formal wear, all of them talking at once, laughing, the clink of glasses and the rustle of expensive fabric. The air smelled like perfume and money, that particular scent of wealth that he could never quite name but always recognized. Section C, tables 7 through 12. He started with table 12, working his way down, filling water glasses, removing empty champagne flutes, nodding politely when people bothered to thank him. Most didn't. They just kept talking around him, through him, like he was part of the architecture. Table 7 was empty except for one person. Marcus saw her from across the section, and something in his chest went tight. She was young, mid-20s maybe, dark hair and a black dress that looked like it cost more than his car. But it was the way she sat that caught him. Shoulders curved inward, head down, the body language of someone trying to take up as little space as possible in a world that already wished she was smaller. He'd seen that posture before. In mirrors mostly, in the months after Sarah died. That shape of grief that isn't fresh and screaming anymore, but has settled into your bones, become part of your structure. As he got closer, he saw the scar. It was significant, running down the left side of her face from temple to jaw. The tissue healed but raised, the kind of injury that spoke of serious trauma, serious pain, the kind of thing you didn't get without a story attached, and probably not a good one. She was watching her water glass like it might suddenly develop the ability to speak. Marcus approached the table, pitcher in hand. Water? She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten people could see her. Oh, yes, thank you. Her voice was quiet, cultured, the accent of expensive schools and European vacations. But there was something else underneath it, something raw that all the elocution lessons in the world couldn't quite cover. He filled her glass, the silence stretching. She was looking at him now, really looking, and there was something in her eyes, a kind of desperate gratitude that made him profoundly uncomfortable, like him just acknowledging her existence was somehow noteworthy. "Thank you," she said again. "You're welcome, miss." He moved to step away and then stopped, some instinct overriding his training to stay invisible. "You want anything else? The hors d'oeuvres are pretty good. Shrimp, little pastry things. I could bring you a plate." She blinked. You don't have to. I'm bringing plates to everyone. It's my job." He smiled, the easy smile he used with Riley when she was nervous. "Might as well eat something before they make you sit through speeches, right?" A small smile touched her lips. It transformed her face, brought light to those dark eyes. "Okay. Yes. Thank you." He headed back toward the kitchen, weaving through the crowd. At table 9, a woman in enough jewelry to finance a small country was complaining loudly about the temperature. Too cold. Absolutely freezing. How was anyone expected to enjoy themselves? It was 72 degrees. Marcus had checked. In the kitchen, he loaded a small plate with shrimp and those little pastry things stuffed with cheese and spinach that the guests seemed to love. He was heading back out when Carlos intercepted him. "What are you doing?" "Bringing a plate to table 7. "Did she ask for it?" "No, I offered." Carlos closed his eyes. "Marcus, buddy, what did I say about engaging?" "She's sitting alone at a table for 12. Everyone else has like 6 people fighting for their attention. I just thought, don't think, just serve. These people, they don't want you to think." But Carlos's voice had softened. He'd been doing this for 15 years, had seen plenty. "Look, I get it. But you can't save everyone, man. Bring her the plate, then move on. We've got 299 other people to keep happy." Marcus carried the plate back to table 7. The young woman was on her phone now, typing something with the focused intensity of someone trying to look busy. He set the plate down gently. "1 appetizer plate. If you need anything else, just flag me down." She looked at the plate, then at him, and for a second he thought she might cry. This is very kind. Thank you." "Just doing my job, miss." But as he walked away, he knew that wasn't entirely true. There'd been something about the way she sat there, the way the whole ballroom seemed to flow around her like water around a stone, that had gotten under his skin. Reminded him of Riley, actually. The way she'd looked those first few months after Sarah died, when kids at school didn't know what to say to the girl whose mom was gone, so they just said nothing. The band was playing something smooth and jazzy. People were starting to drift toward the dance floor, couples pairing off. Marcus worked Section C, staying busy, staying invisible, but he kept track of table 7 in his peripheral vision. Nobody sat down. Dinner was announced. The lights dimmed slightly. People found their seats. Table 7 remained empty except for the young woman in black, picking at her shrimp and trying to look like this was completely normal, like she'd chosen to dine alone at a party of 300. The speeches started. Leonard Hart took the podium, talked about quarterly earnings and market expansion and the bright future of Hart Industries. He was good, Marcus had to admit, the kind of speaker who made you believe he actually gave a damn about the workers on the factory floor, not just the shareholders in the ballroom. "And I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special," Leonard was saying, and Marcus saw the young woman at table 7 go very still. "My daughter, Isabella, who has shown more courage in the past 3 years than most people show in a lifetime. Sweetheart, this company exists to build a better future, and you remind me every day what we're building it for." The spotlight found her. Isabella Hart, because of course that was her name, Leonard Hart's daughter. She stood, gave a small wave, and the applause that followed was polite, warm, even. But Marcus could see the faces around her, the way eyes caught on her scar and then darted away, the way smiles went tight. She sat back down fast. The speeches continued. The food came out. Filet mignon and Chilean sea bass, roasted vegetables that had been arranged to look like art. Marcus and the other waiters moved through the crowd in synchronized choreography, delivering plates, removing courses, pouring wine. At table 7, Isabella ate alone. It was during dessert that things went sideways. Marcus was clearing plates from table 8 when he heard it, loud enough to carry, pitched to be heard over the music and conversation. I mean, I understand trauma and everything, but there are surgeons who specialize in that sort of thing. The woman from earlier, diamonds and Dior, holding court at table 6. If I looked like that, I certainly wouldn't be out in public until it was fixed. Her table mates made vague sounds of agreement, uncomfortable laughter. It's just inconsiderate, really. People are trying to enjoy their evening. Marcus's hand stopped moving. He was holding a stack of dessert plates, standing less than 10 feet away, and he could see Isabella at the next table over, could see the exact moment the words hit her, the way her spine went rigid, the way her hand tightened on her fork. She didn't turn around, didn't respond, just sat there, absorbing it. Something in Marcus's chest caught fire. He set the plates down carefully on the service station. Carlos was across the room, managing something at table 14. The other waiters were busy. Nobody was paying attention to him. Marcus walked to table 6. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice was polite, professional. The diamond woman looked up, mildly annoyed at being interrupted. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry?" "The young woman you were discussing, I know her." He didn't, not really, but the lie came easy. "And I wanted you to know that she's braver than anyone in this room, including you." The table went silent. The woman's face flushed red. "I beg your pardon? Who do you think you're—" "I think I'm someone who recognizes courage when I see it." Marcus kept his voice level, but something in it must have registered because the people at table 6 were staring at him now. "And I think you're someone who mistakes cruelty for conversation." "How dare you!" The woman stood up, fury radiating off her. "I want to speak to your manager, right now." "That's fine. But first I want you to understand something." Marcus took a step closer, and his voice dropped. Quiet. Intense. The voice he'd used with his squad when things got serious. "That scar you think is so offensive, it's proof she survived something that would have destroyed most people. It's proof of strength. And the fact that you can look at it and only see something broken says a lot more about you than it does about her. I am calling security. Please do." He straightened. "I'll wait." But he didn't wait. He turned and walked away, past table 7 where Isabella was staring at him with wide eyes, past the other tables where people were starting to notice something was happening, straight to Carlos, who was hurrying over with an expression that said Marcus's employment was about to end in real time. "Outside. Now." Carlos grabbed his arm, steered him toward the service door. In the hallway, away from the ballroom's noise, Carlos let go and ran both hands through his hair. "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking someone needed to say something." "That's not your job. Your job is to serve food and be invisible, and definitely not to pick fights with the guests." Carlos was pacing now, agitated. "That woman is married to Richard Pemberton. You know who that is? He's on the Hart Industries board. He could get this entire catering company blacklisted with one phone call. She was being cruel, and that's not your problem." Carlos stopped pacing, looked at him. "Marcus, I get it. You're a good guy. You see someone hurting, you want to help. But you can't. Not here. These people, they live in a different world. They have different rules. And we're just the help." Marcus knew he was right. He did. But the image of Isabella sitting there, taking it, absorbing that poison like she deserved it, he couldn't unsee it. "I'm probably fired, aren't I?" "Probably," Carlos sighed. "I'll try to smooth it over, but yeah, you should probably go. I need to get my jacket from the break room. Make it fast." Marcus headed down the hallway, past the service areas and storage rooms, to the small break room where the catering staff kept their personal items. His jacket was there. Riley's school photo tucked in the inside pocket, where he always kept it. 7 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, the biggest smile in the world. He pulled out his phone. 2 texts from Mrs. Chen, his neighbor who watched Riley during his evening shifts. "Everything good here. Riley's asleep. Take your time." Actually, she's not asleep. She's reading under the covers with a flashlight. Just FYI. He smiled despite everything. That was his kid. Couldn't put a book down to save her life. He was heading back toward the exit when he heard music swelling from the ballroom. The dance portion of the evening was starting. He should leave. He should get his things and go and figure out how to make rent when he was short a week's pay. But something pulled him back. Just one look, just to make sure Isabella was okay. He pushed through the service door and stood in the shadows near the kitchen, watching. The dance floor was filling up, couples in formal wear spinning and swaying, the band playing something classic and romantic. Leonard Hart was dancing with an older woman, probably a board member's wife. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked beautiful. At table 7, Isabella sat alone, watching, and then someone walked up to her table. A man, late 30s, expensive suit. Marcus recognized him from earlier, James something, one of the executives. He was smiling, saying something to Isabella. She was shaking her head, but he persisted. Finally, she stood. They walked to the dance floor, started to dance, and Marcus could see it from across the room, the way James held her like she was made of glass, the way his eyes never quite met hers, the way he kept glancing around to see who was watching. This wasn't kindness. This was performance. This was someone doing a good deed so people would see him doing it. The song ended. James bowed, said something polite, and walked away fast. Isabella stood there in the middle of the dance floor for a moment, alone in the crowd, before making her way back to table 7. That was when Marcus stopped thinking and started moving. He crossed the ballroom, weaving through people who didn't see him because he was the help, because he was invisible. The band was starting a new song, something slow and sweet. Marcus could feel his heart pounding, could feel every eye that was about to land on him, but he kept walking. Isabella was sitting down when he reached her table. "Excuse me, miss," he said, and she looked up. Recognition flickered in her eyes, the waiter who'd brought her food, who'd somehow witnessed her humiliation at table 6. "Would you do me the honor of this dance?" The ballroom didn't literally go silent. The band kept playing, people kept talking, but something shifted in the air, some collective attention swinging toward table 7, where a waiter in an ill-fitting tuxedo was asking Leonard Hart's daughter to dance. Isabella stared at him. What? This song. Would you dance with me?" He kept his voice steady, his hand extended. "If you want to. No pressure." She glanced around at the faces turning toward them, the whispers starting. "You don't have to." "I know. I want to." For a long moment, she just looked at his hand. And Marcus understood that this wasn't really about dancing. This was about whether she believed him, whether she believed that someone could look at her and see something other than damage. "Okay," she said quietly. "Yes." She placed her hand in his and stood. They walked to the dance floor together, and the whispers grew louder. Marcus could feel the attention like heat on his back, could sense Carlos somewhere in the shadows, probably having a stroke, but he didn't care. They reached the center of the floor. He placed one hand at her waist, held her other hand in his, and started to move. "I should warn you," Isabella said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm not very good at this." "Neither am I," Marcus smiled. "But I figure if we both commit to being bad at it together, maybe it evens out." She laughed. It was small, surprised, but real. "That's not how dancing works." "You sure?" "Because I'm pretty sure confidence is like 90% of it." They turned slowly, finding a rhythm. She was actually a decent dancer, probably had lessons as a kid. Marcus was making it up as he went, mostly just trying not to step on her feet. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Dancing? I heard it's good for cardiovascular health." "You know what I mean." He did. "Because you looked like you could use a dance, and because those people at table 6 were wrong." Her eyes went bright. "You heard that." "Yeah." "You confronted them." "Yeah." "You're going to get fired." "Probably already am." She processed that. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Worth it." He spun her gently and she followed, her dress swirling. "Besides, I'm a terrible waiter, probably doing everyone a favor." "I don't think that's true." "You're basing that on what exactly?" "You brought me food when nobody else would sit with me. You stood up for me when you didn't have to. That's not terrible. That's..." She trailed off, but he could fill in the blank. Kind, decent, human, basic things that shouldn't be remarkable but somehow were. The song was ending. Marcus could feel the moment slipping away, could feel reality waiting to crash back in. But before it did, he wanted her to know something. That scar, he said quietly, it doesn't make you less beautiful. It makes you more real. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time. Isabella's breath caught. Tears were building in her eyes, threatening to spill over. You don't know me. No, but I know strength when I see it. And I know you're stronger than anyone in this room gives you credit for, including probably yourself. The music stopped. Applause rippled through the ballroom and Marcus stepped back, bowed slightly. Isabella was crying now, but she was also smiling, and the combination was something he'd remember for the rest of his life. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for… Whatever she was going to say got interrupted by a small voice cutting through the crowd like a bell. Daddy! Marcus turned and his heart dropped into his stomach. Riley was running across the ballroom in her pink pajamas and unicorn slippers, her dark hair flying behind her, Mrs. Chen hurrying after her with an expression of profound apology. Daddy, you didn't come home and Mrs. Chen said you were at the fancy party and I wanted to see… She stopped short, staring up at Isabella. Whoa! Riley, sweetheart, what are you doing here? Marcus knelt down, trying to position himself between his daughter and the 300 people now watching this scene unfold. But Riley was already reaching out toward Isabella, her small hand lifting toward the scar with the fearless curiosity of childhood. Does that hurt? Riley, no. Marcus started to grab her hand, but Isabella knelt down too, bringing herself to Riley's level. It used to, Isabella said gently, but not anymore. Riley studied her with intense focus. It looks like a lightning bolt. Yeah? Yeah. Lightning bolts are cool. They mean you have power. She said this with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old who'd recently discovered mythology. Like Zeus, he has lightning. Isabella laughed, this time fully, the sound bright and unguarded. I never thought of it that way. You should. It makes you look like a warrior princess. Riley turned to Marcus. Daddy, doesn't she look like a princess? Every eye in the ballroom was on them. Marcus could feel judgment and curiosity and something else, something softer, building in the air. He looked at Isabella, at this young woman who'd been treated like something broken, and he saw what his daughter saw. Someone strong, someone who'd survived. Yeah, Riley Bear, she does. Isabella was crying again, but this time she was laughing too, and she pulled Riley into a hug that his daughter returned with enthusiasm. Thank you, Isabella whispered into Riley's hair. Thank you so much. Mrs. Chen had reached them, breathless and apologetic. I am so sorry, Marcus. She slipped out when I went to answer the door. It's okay. He stood, scooping Riley into his arms. We were just leaving anyway. But before he could take a step, a voice rang out across the ballroom. Marcus Reed. The crowd parted. Leonard Hart was walking toward them, and his face was unreadable. Behind him, the woman from table 6 was pointing, saying something to her husband, probably demanding Marcus be arrested for assault or something equally dramatic. Mr. Hart. Marcus set Riley down, stepped forward. Sir, I apologize for the disruption. Leonard held up a hand, stopped, looked at his daughter still kneeling on the floor, still holding Riley's hand. Then he looked at Marcus, really looked at him. What's your full name, son? Marcus James Reed, sir. Something flickered in Leonard's eyes. Recognition. Reed, you served with Jonathan. It wasn't a question. Marcus went very still. Yes, sir. 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. John was my squad leader. My brother, Leonard said, and his voice had gone thick. My baby brother. The ballroom was utterly silent now. Marcus swallowed hard. He was the best man I ever served with, saved my life twice. The second time, he looked at Isabella, at this young woman who had her uncle's eyes. The second time, he didn't make it home. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Leonard's composure cracked. He crossed the distance between them and pulled Marcus into a fierce hug that lasted exactly 3 seconds before he stepped back, wiping his eyes. Jonathan wrote to me about you. Sent me a picture. But you look different now. It's been 8 years, sir, and I had more hair back then. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd, breaking the tension. Leonard turned to the ballroom, his voice carrying. This man served alongside my brother in Afghanistan. He fought for this country with honor. And tonight, he showed my daughter more kindness than almost anyone in this room. His eyes swept the crowd, landing on table 6, which makes the behavior I witnessed earlier even more shameful. The woman in diamonds went pale. Mrs. Pemberton, Mr. Pemberton, I'm going to need you to leave. Now. Leonard, this is ridiculous. My event, my company, my daughter, you're done. Leonard's voice was steel. Security will escort you out. 2 men in dark suits materialized from the edges of the room. The Pembertons left, fury and humiliation radiating off them in waves, but they left. Leonard turned back to Marcus. You were fired tonight, I assume. Yes, sir. Consider yourself rehired, not as a waiter. He pulled out his phone, typed something. My assistant will call you Monday. We need good people at Hart Industries, people with integrity. He looked at Riley, smiled. And we have excellent benefits. Health insurance, college fund contributions for dependents. Marcus couldn't breathe. Sir, I don't... Monday. We'll talk. Leonard extended his hand. Marcus shook it, feeling the strength in the older man's grip, feeling something shift in the architecture of his life. Then Leonard turned to Isabella, who'd stood up, who was watching her father with something like wonder. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. See what? That bringing you here wasn't about making you be brave. You're already brave. You're the bravest person I know. He pulled her close. I should have protected you better. Dad, I love you. Your mother would be so proud of who you've become. Isabella buried her face in her father's shoulder and sobbed, and the sound was breaking and healing all at once. The band started playing again, soft and gentle. People slowly turned back to their conversations, giving the hearts privacy. Marcus picked up Riley, started to slip away, but Isabella called out, Wait! She crossed to them, her makeup ruined, her eyes red, but she was smiling. What's your daughter's name? Riley. Riley Elizabeth Reed. Riley, would you like to come to my house sometime? I have a garden and horses and probably too many books. Riley's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Isabella looked at Marcus. If that's okay with your dad. Yeah, Marcus managed. Yeah, that would be great. Isabella reached into her clutch, pulled out a card. My personal number, call me. And Marcus? She met his eyes, and hers were clear. Thank you for seeing me. He took the card, nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. As they left the ballroom, Riley chattered excitedly about the princess with the lightning scar, about the horses, about everything. Mrs. Chen apologized 4 more times. Marcus barely heard any of it. He was thinking about Jonathan, about his squad leader who'd thrown himself on a grenade to save 6 other men. About how courage looked different than people expected. About how Jonathan's niece had needed someone tonight, and somehow, impossibly, Marcus had been there. Behind them, the gala continued. But something had changed in that ballroom. People were looking at Isabella differently now, seeing her differently. Or maybe just finally seeing her at all. In the parking lot, Marcus helped Riley into her car seat, buckled her in. She was already half asleep, the excitement fading into exhaustion. Daddy? She mumbled. Yeah, baby. I like the princess. Me too, Riley Bear. Me too. He drove home through streets still wet from earlier rain, past restaurants closing for the night, past other people's lit windows and other people's lives. Monday, Leonard Hart had said. Monday, everything changes. But it had already changed. In one dance, in one moment of choosing to see someone everyone else had decided was easier not to, something had shifted. Sarah would have been proud, Marcus thought. She'd always said he led with his heart even when his head told him not to. It had driven her crazy sometimes, how he'd stop to help strangers, how he couldn't walk past someone struggling without offering a hand. But tonight, it had mattered. Tonight, his inability to stay invisible when someone was hurting had made a difference. At a stoplight, Marcus pulled out Isabella's card. Thick stock, embossed lettering, her personal cell number written on the back in elegant script. He thought about calling her, thought about checking that she was okay, that the rest of the night had been bearable. But it was late, and she'd been through enough. And besides, he had a feeling this wasn't ending. This was starting. Monday would come. And with it, whatever Leonard Hart had planned. But for now, Marcus drove his daughter home through a city that looked the same as it always had, even though something fundamental had shifted in the world's gravity. For now, that was enough. In the back seat, Riley snored softly, dreaming of princesses and lightning scars and kindness that looked like courage because, in the end, maybe they were the same thing. The apartment Marcus came home to wasn't much. A two-bedroom on the third floor of a building that had seen better decades, with radiators that clanked like they were trying to communicate in Morse code, and a refrigerator that hummed loud enough to drown out conversation. But the rent was $800 a month. Mrs. Chen next door charged practically nothing to watch Riley, and the roof didn't leak. Much. He carried his sleeping daughter up the stairs, her head heavy on his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. The hallway smelled like someone had cooked fish for dinner, and someone else was smoking something they probably shouldn't be. Third door on the left. Home. Inside, Marcus laid Riley in her bed without changing her out of the pajamas, just pulled the unicorn comforter up to her chin and kissed her forehead. She stirred, mumbled something about horses, then settled back into sleep. In the kitchen, Marcus made instant coffee because it was either that or fall asleep standing up, and he needed to think. The business card Isabella had given him sat on the counter, catching the light from the street lamp outside. Thick paper. Expensive. The kind of thing that cost more to print than his weekly grocery budget. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Leonard Hart. I hope you don't mind. I got your contact information from the catering company. I wanted to reiterate my offer. Monday, 9 a.m., Hart Industries headquarters. Ask for Jennifer at the front desk. She'll be expecting you." This is not charity, Marcus. This is recognition of character. See you Monday. Marcus read it 3 times, set the phone down, picked it up again and read it once more to make sure he hadn't hallucinated it. A job, a real job, with benefits. He thought about calling someone, sharing the news, but it was nearly midnight, and the only people in his life were Riley, Mrs. Chen, and a couple of guys from his old unit he texted with maybe twice a year. Sarah's family had cut him off after the funeral. Apparently a Marine corporal wasn't good enough for their daughter while she was alive, and definitely wasn't worth staying in touch with after she was gone. So he sat alone in his kitchen, drinking bad coffee, holding a business card from a woman with a lightning bolt scar, and a father who remembered Jonathan Reed. Jonathan, who'd been 23 when he died, who'd loved terrible punk music and good coffee and wrote letters home to his big brother about the Marines he served with, the kid from Chicago who never shut up about his pregnant wife. How scared he was of being a father, how desperately he wanted to be good at it. Marcus hadn't known Leonard Hart had those letters, hadn't known Jonathan talked about him at all. The coffee was bitter, he drank it anyway. Sunday crawled by with the aggressive slowness of a day that knew you were waiting for Monday. Riley wanted to go to the park, so they went. And she talked nonstop about the princess with the scar, while Marcus pushed her on the swings and tried to figure out what you wore to a meeting at Hart Industries when your entire professional wardrobe consisted of one interview suit from Target and the rental tux he'd already returned. "Daddy, you're not listening." "I am, baby. You were talking about the horses." "No, I was talking about how the princess needs friends because everyone was being mean to her and that's not fair." Riley dragged her feet in the dirt, slowing the swing. "Can we be her friends?" "I don't know if it works like that, Riley Bear. She lives in a different world than us." "But you danced with her, and she hugged me. That's what friends do." The logic was airtight in the way only 7-year-old logic could be. Marcus lifted her off the swing, set her on the ground. "How about we see what happens? Sometimes people say things at parties they don't really mean later." She meant it, I could tell. Riley grabbed his hand, started pulling him toward the slide. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's 11 in the morning." "Ice cream doesn't have a time, Daddy. It just has a moment." He had no idea where she got this stuff. Sarah, probably. Sarah had been the poetic one, the one who saw magic in regular things. Marcus was practical, grounded. Together they'd balanced. Apart, he was just a guy trying to figure out how to raise a kid who deserved better than instant coffee and third-floor walk-ups. They got ice cream. Riley's moment turned into a chocolate-covered face and a stomachache by 2 p.m., but she was happy, so Marcus counted it as a win. That night, after Riley was asleep, he pulled out the suit. Navy blue, off the rack, worn to exactly 3 job interviews over the past year. All of them had ended the same way. "Thanks for your service. We'll be in touch." "We went with someone else." The economy was tough. Everyone was hiring. Nobody was hiring him. Turned out being good at combat logistics didn't translate well to civilian supply chain management, and the gap in his resume where Sarah got sick and he'd taken family leave to care for her made people nervous. Marcus ironed the suit, burned his hand on the steam, swore quietly so Riley wouldn't hear. The shirt was wrinkled but clean. The tie had a small stain he couldn't remember getting. He'd make it work. He had to. Monday morning came in gray and cold, the kind of October weather that couldn't decide if it was still fall or already winter. Marcus dropped Riley at school, watched her run toward the building with her backpack bouncing, then sat in his car for a full minute trying to remember how to breathe normally. Hart Industries headquarters was downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of modern architecture that screamed money. Marcus had driven past it 100 times, never imagined he'd be walking through the front doors. Security was polite but thorough. ID check, metal detector, visitor badge. The lobby was enormous. Marble floors and a reception desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of stone. A woman in a sleek black suit looked up as he approached. "Marcus Reed, here to see Jennifer." "Mr. Reed, yes. Jennifer's expecting you, 20th floor." She handed him a key card. "Elevators are to your left." The elevator was glass on one side, showing the city dropping away as he rose. By the 10th floor, Marcus could see the river. By the 20th, he could see 3 counties. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a handshake that could crack walnuts. "Mr. Reed, welcome." "Mr. Hart is finishing up a call, but he asked me to get you situated. Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great, thank you." She led him through a maze of corridors, past offices where people in expensive clothes did important things on multiple monitors. The coffee she brought him was nothing like the instant stuff at home. It was rich and dark, and tasted like it cost more than his phone bill. "Mr. Hart will be with you shortly. Make yourself comfortable." The office she left him in wasn't Leonard's. It was smaller, a conference room maybe, but the furniture alone probably cost more than Marcus's car. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city sprawled out below, people going about their lives completely unaware that up here, decisions were being made that would affect whether they had jobs, whether their neighborhoods got developed, whether their futures looked like progress or decay. The door opened. Leonard Hart walked in, and he looked different than he had Saturday night. Less polished somehow, more human. Still in a suit that cost more than Marcus made in a month, but the tie was slightly loosened and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of a rough couple of days. "Marcus, thank you for coming." They shook hands. Leonard sat down across from him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I've been thinking about Jonathan a lot since Saturday," Leonard said finally. "I kept his letters, all of them. Did you know he wanted to go into teaching when he got out? High school history. He thought kids needed to understand where we came from to figure out where we're going. He never told me that. He was good at keeping things to himself. Came from our father, I think. The old man never met an emotion he couldn't bury under work." Leonard smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Jonathan was different. He felt things, deeply. It scared me sometimes, how much he cared. Marcus thought about the Jonathan he'd known. The squad leader who never left a man behind, who wrote letters home to his brother about the Marines under his command, who'd made Marcus promise that if anything happened, he'd tell Sarah her husband loved her. Marcus had kept that promise. Had shown up at their apartment 3 days after the explosion, still in uniform, and told Sarah that her husband's last words were about her, about the baby they were going to have, about how scared and excited he was to be a father. It was a lie. Jonathan's last words had been, "Get down," shouted half a second before the world turned into fire and noise. But some lies were kinder than truth. "He saved my life," Marcus said. "I was too close to the door. He saw the tripwire before I did, pushed me back, took the blast himself." Leonard's jaw tightened. "They gave him a medal. Sent it to my father. The old man put it in a drawer and never looked at it again." He paused. "I kept it. It's in my office. I look at it every day and think about how my baby brother died a hero and I'm here making money off government contracts. There's no shame in that, isn't there?" Leonard's eyes were hard now, but the hardness wasn't directed at Marcus. "I've spent 20 years building this company, making shareholders rich, throwing parties for people who wouldn't cross the street to help someone in need. And Saturday night, I watched those same people treat my daughter like she was something broken while I stood there and did nothing. You did something. You threw them out. After a stranger showed more courage than I did. After you stood up for her when her own father was too worried about optics and quarterly earnings to protect his own child. Leonard stood, walked to the window. Do you know why I asked you here, Marcus? You said something about a job. I lied. Or not lied exactly, but simplified. He turned back. I don't just want to give you a job. I want to offer you a position. Director of Operations, Veteran Outreach Division. We're launching a new initiative to hire veterans, provide transition support, create pathways to meaningful careers. It's been in development for months, but Saturday night made me realize we need someone leading it who actually understands what veterans go through, someone with integrity. Marcus couldn't breathe. Director? Mr. Hart, I appreciate the offer, but I don't have the qualifications. You have the only qualification that matters. You're a good man who does the right thing even when it costs you. Leonard pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Salary, benefits, stock options, this is what I'm offering. I understand if you need time to think about it. Marcus opened the folder. The number at the top made his vision blur. $85,000 a year. Health insurance, dental, vision, college fund contributions, 4 weeks paid vacation. He couldn't finish the sentence. Fair compensation for important work. We're serious about this initiative, Marcus. We want to hire 500 veterans over the next 2 years. We need someone who can build the infrastructure, create the programs, make it real, someone they'll trust, someone who's been where they are. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll help me build something that would have made Jonathan proud. Leonard sat back down. I've spent 20 years making money. I want to spend the next 20 making a difference. But I can't do it alone. Through the window, the city sprawled in every direction, full of people trying to make rent, trying to raise kids, trying to find meaning in the space between paychecks. People like Marcus had been 48 hours ago. Yes, he said. Yes, I'll do it. Leonard's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time since he'd walked in. Good. Jennifer will get you set up with HR, get the paperwork started. You can start in 2 weeks. Gives you time to sort out childcare, transition, whatever you need. They shook hands again, and this time it felt different. Not like boss and employee, like partners, like friends. Jennifer reappeared, walked him through paperwork that made his head spin. W-4s and direct deposit forms and benefit selections and orientation schedules. By the time he left the building, it was almost noon and his hand hurt from signing his name so many times. In the parking garage, sitting in his car, Marcus called Mrs. Chen. How's Riley? Good. She's at school. Everything okay? Yeah, better than okay. He could hear his voice shaking. I got a job. A real job. Starting salary is more than I made in the Marines. Mrs. Chen made a sound that might have been crying or laughing or both. That's wonderful, Marcus. You deserve this. You're a good boy. A good father. I couldn't have done it without you, without your help with Riley. Family helps family. You need me to pick her up from school today? If you don't mind, I need to run an errand. The errand was stopping at Target and buying clothes that fit, that looked professional, that didn't have stains or burns or memories attached. The salesperson helped him pick out 3 shirts, 2 pairs of slacks, a new tie. The total made him wince, but he had a signing bonus coming, $5,000, Jennifer had said, like that was normal. So he'd survive. Riley was waiting on Mrs. Chen's couch when he got there, doing homework at the coffee table. She looked up when he walked in, and her face split into a smile that made everything else worth it. Daddy, did you get the job? I did, baby. She launched herself at him, all arms and legs in joy. I knew you would. Can we celebrate? What do you want to do? Can we call the princess? Marcus's stomach dropped. Riley, I don't think... You have her card. You showed me. We should tell her the good news because she's our friend, and friends share good news. Mrs. Chen was watching from the kitchen, trying not to smile. No help there. How about we get pizza first, and then maybe we'll see about calling? Promise? He shouldn't promise. The Harts lived in a different stratosphere, and whatever moment they'd shared Saturday night was probably exactly that, a moment. Isabella had been grateful, emotional, But that didn't mean she wanted a single father and his 7-year-old showing up in her life. "I promise we'll think about it," he said, which was the best he could do. They got pizza from Tony's, the place down the street that had known them since Riley was a baby. Tony himself came out, asked how they were doing, gave Riley an extra cookie with the order. Simple kindness from simple people in a simple neighborhood. And Marcus felt a sudden fear that the job, the money, would take them away from this, would turn them into the kind of people who forgot what it was like to struggle. At home, Riley ate 3 slices and got sauce all over her face. Marcus managed 2 and spent most of dinner watching his daughter, memorizing this moment before everything changed. "Daddy, you're being weird." "Sorry, just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am to have you." She rolled her eyes, very 7. "You're supposed to have me. I'm your kid." "Best thing that ever happened to me." "What about Mommy?" The question landed like it always did, unexpected and sharp. "Mommy was the best thing that happened to us both. You know that." "I wish she was here." "Me too, baby. Every day." Riley went quiet, picking at her crust. "Do you think she'd like the princess?" "Yeah, I think she would." "Then we should call her. Mommy would want us to have more people who are nice to us." The logic was airtight again, and this time Marcus didn't have a counter-argument that didn't make him sound like a coward. He pulled out Isabella's card, stared at the number. "Okay, but if she doesn't answer, we're not going to bother her again. Deal?" "Deal." He dialed before he could talk himself out of it. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. He was about to hang up when someone answered. "Hello?" Isabella's voice, tentative. "Hi. This is Marcus Reed, from Saturday night. Sorry to bother you." "Marcus." "No, it's not a bother. I'm glad you called. I was hoping you would." Riley was bouncing in her seat, making frantic, "let me talk" gestures. Marcus put it on speaker. "I'm here with Riley. She wanted to say hi." "Hi, Princess," Riley practically shouted into the phone. Isabella's laugh came through clear and bright. "Hi, Riley. How are you?" "Good. Guess what? My daddy got a job at your daddy's company, and we're celebrating with pizza, and I ate 3 whole slices, and—" "Riley, breathe," Marcus interrupted. "Sorry, but it's exciting." "It is exciting," Isabella agreed. "I heard about the job. My father told me this morning. He said you're going to be helping veterans. That's really important work." "I'm going to do my best." "I know you will." A pause. "Listen, I know this might be forward, but I meant what I said Saturday about you both coming to visit. Would you want to come over this weekend? Saturday, maybe? I can show Riley the horses, and we could have lunch. Nothing fancy, just I'd really like to see you both again." Riley was nodding so hard her whole body moved. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, something he hadn't realized was clenched tight. "We'd love to." "What time?" "Is noon okay?" "Perfect." They exchanged addresses. Isabella's coming out as a road that Marcus vaguely knew was in the expensive part of the county, where houses sat on actual acres instead of feet. After they hung up, Riley did a victory dance around the living room that involved a lot of spinning and nearly knocked over a lamp. "We're going to see the princess! We're going to see the horses!" Marcus caught her mid-spin. "You need to brush your teeth and get ready for bed." "But I'm not tired." Riley Elizabeth Reed. The full name did its job. She groaned but headed toward the bathroom, still humming with excitement. Alone in the living room, Marcus looked around the apartment that had been home for 3 years. The couch with the broken spring in the middle, the TV they'd gotten from a yard sale, Riley's art taped all over the walls. Not much, but theirs. Things were changing fast, and he couldn't tell if that feeling in his stomach was excitement or terror or some combination of both. His phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. "Thank you for calling, and thank you again for Saturday. You changed something for me. I'll explain more when I see you." He read it twice, then saved her number under Isabella Hart with a small horse emoji that Riley had taught him to use. In the bathroom, he could hear Riley singing while she brushed her teeth, something about princesses and lightning and magic. The sound filled the apartment, filled the spaces Sarah used to occupy, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus let himself believe that maybe they were going to be okay, maybe better than okay. The week that followed felt like living in someone else's life. Marcus spent Tuesday and Wednesday finishing out his shifts at the warehouse, where he'd been working part-time, lifting boxes and loading trucks. His supervisor, a guy named Pete, who'd hired him despite the resume gap, shook his hand and told him he'd always known Marcus was destined for better things. "You got that look," Pete said. "That squared-away look. Military? Marines. Knew it. You're going to do great, Reed. Don't forget us little people." Marcus promised he wouldn't, and he meant it. Thursday, he took Riley to buy new clothes for the visit to Isabella's. She insisted she needed a dress, something princess-appropriate, and they spent an hour at the mall finding one that was both affordable and met her exacting standards. They settled on navy blue with white flowers, and Riley wore it around the store for 20 minutes before they bought it, practicing her curtsy in the mirror. Friday, Leonard Hart's assistant called to confirm his start date, 2 weeks from Monday, and to let him know his office was being prepared. He had an office, with a door and a window. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Jonathan, about the butterfly effect of one dance at one gala, about how your whole life could pivot on a single decision to be kind when it would have been easier not to be. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine that felt like a good omen. Riley was up before dawn, too excited to sleep, and by 9 a.m. she'd changed outfits 3 times and asked Marcus approximately 47 times if it was time to go yet. "Riley, it's a 2-hour drive. We need to leave at 10. It's 9:15. "But what if there's traffic? Then we'll still be early." She was wearing the new dress, her hair in 2 braids that Marcus had managed without completely destroying, and shoes that were slightly too small because she was growing faster than he could afford to keep up with. But she looked happy. That was what mattered. They left at 9:50, Riley insisting they needed the extra 10 minutes for unexpected delays. The drive took them out of the city, through suburbs that got progressively nicer, past strip malls and into areas where the stores had names instead of purposes, where the trees were old and the houses sat back from the road, behind gates and long driveways. Isabella's address led them to a property that made Marcus's throat tight. The gate was open, the driveway lined with trees that were probably older than his grandparents. The house at the end was massive, brick and stone, 3 stories, the kind of place that appeared in magazines about architecture and wealth. "Whoa," Riley breathed. "The princess lives in a castle." "It's just a house, baby." "Daddy, that is not just a house." She had a point. Marcus pulled up to the front, suddenly very aware of his beat-up Honda in this driveway, his Target shirt, and his daughter's 2 small shoes. But before the anxiety could take root, the front door opened and Isabella stepped out, and she was smiling. She was wearing jeans and a simple white shirt, her hair down, the scar visible but somehow less prominent in natural light. Or maybe it just mattered less when the person wearing it looked so genuinely happy to see you. "You made it!" She came down the steps, and Riley was out of the car before Marcus could unbuckle his seatbelt, running toward Isabella with her arms out. The hug was enthusiastic and entirely mutual. When they separated, Isabella knelt down to Riley's level. "That dress is beautiful. You look like royalty." "I got it just for today. Do you like my braids? Daddy did them." "He did an excellent job." Isabella looked up at Marcus, still smiling. "Hi. Hi. Thanks for having us. Thanks for coming. Come on, let me show you around." The house was as impressive inside as out. High ceilings, art on the walls, that was probably worth more than Marcus would make in his new job, furniture that looked antique and expensive. But Isabella led them through quickly, not lingering, heading straight for the back of the house. "The horses are out back. Riley, have you ever ridden before?" "No, but I want to learn." "We'll start with meeting them first, 1 step at a time." The back of the property opened onto what could only be described as an estate. Gardens, a pool that looked like something from a resort, and beyond that, stables and a fenced pasture where 3 horses grazed in the sunshine. Riley made a sound that was pure joy and took off running toward the fence. Isabella and Marcus followed at a more reasonable pace. "This is incredible," Marcus said. "You grew up here?" "Part of me did. We also had a place in the city. My father thought we should understand both worlds." She paused. "I hated it here after the accident. Too many memories of my mother. Too many rooms where I could hear her absence. But lately I've been trying to reclaim it, make new memories." That's good. That's healthy. Is it? Or is it just avoiding the city where people stare? The honesty caught him off guard. I think it's whatever you need it to be. They reached the fence where Riley was already introducing herself to a brown mare who seemed perfectly content to accept chin scratches from a 7-year-old. That's Ginger, Isabella said. She's the sweetest. Wouldn't hurt a fly. Can I ride her? Maybe next time, if you keep coming back. Today, let's just get to know each other. Isabella climbed over the fence with an ease that spoke of years of practice. Come on, I'll show you how to brush her. What followed was an hour of Riley learning about horses, asking approximately 9 million questions, and Marcus watching Isabella transform in front of his eyes. Around the horses, she was confident, knowledgeable, completely at ease. The careful guardedness she'd worn at the gala was gone, replaced by someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was doing. You're good with her, Marcus said at one point when Riley was distracted brushing Ginger's mane. I always wanted siblings, kids in general. I like their honesty. They don't pretend. They just say what they think. That can be a problem sometimes. Isabella laughed. I imagine, but it's also refreshing. Adults spend so much time managing perceptions. Kids just exist. Lunch was on the patio. Sandwiches and fruit and lemonade that tasted homemade because it was. Isabella had made it that morning, she said. Wanted everything to feel casual, not like a production. They ate and talked, Riley dominating the conversation with observations about horses and school and her friend Maya, who could do a backflip. My daddy can't do a backflip, Riley announced, but he can do push-ups, like 100. I cannot do 100 push-ups, Marcus corrected. You did them for my PE class. You did so many. That was 50, and I was sore for 3 days. Isabella was smiling, watching them with something soft in her eyes. You two are really close. It's just been us for a while, Marcus said. We figured out how to be a team. It shows. She stood, started clearing plates. Riley, want to help me get dessert? There's dessert? Cookies. I made them this morning, too. Riley followed her inside like she'd known Isabella her whole life, chattering about her favorite kinds of cookies. Marcus sat alone on the patio looking out at the property, at the life money could buy. It was beautiful, no question, but it also felt lonely in a way his cramped apartment never did. When they came back, Riley carrying a plate of chocolate chip cookies that were still warm, Leonard Hart was with them. Marcus stood automatically. Mr. Hart, I didn't know you were here. I live here, Leonard said, but he was smiling. Technically, though I spend most of my time at the office or the city place. Came out today because Isabella mentioned you were visiting, wanted to say hello properly. Last time we spoke, I ambushed you with a job offer. Best ambush I've ever experienced. They shook hands. Leonard ruffled Riley's hair, which she tolerated because her hands were full of cookies. How are you settling into the idea of joining Hart Industries? Still feels surreal, honestly. You'll do fine. Better than fine. Leonard sat down, accepted a cookie from Riley. Isabella tells me you're a natural with horses. I didn't touch the horses. That was all Riley. I meant you're natural around them. She says Ginger liked you. Ginger likes everyone, Isabella interjected. She's a terrible judge of character. Unlike you, who takes forever to trust anyone. Leonard said it fondly, but there was weight behind it. Marcus and Riley are good people, sweetheart. You can trust that. Something passed between father and daughter, some understanding Marcus wasn't privy to. Then Isabella smiled. I know, Dad. They spent the rest of the afternoon in easy conversation, moving from the patio to the living room when the sun got too hot. Leonard told stories about Jonathan that Marcus had never heard, about his brother as a kid, always trying to save stray animals, always standing up for the underdog, always believing people were fundamentally good even when evidence suggested otherwise. He got that from our mother, Leonard said. She was the optimist. I got our father's pragmatism. Jonathan got her heart. He was a good man, Marcus said quietly. The best. And you honored him, Marcus. The way you served with him, the way you've lived since. He'd be proud. The words settled into Marcus's chest, found a home in the place where grief lived, not fixing it, but acknowledging it, seeing it. By 4 p.m., Riley was starting to fade, the excitement catching up with her. Isabella walked them to the car, hugged Riley goodbye with promises that she could come back any time, that next time they'd try riding. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for today, for all of it. Thank you for coming, for trusting me with your time." Isabella hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're helping me more than you know." "How?" "By reminding me what normal feels like, what friendship feels like. I've been isolated for so long, and you're showing me there's another way to be." Marcus squeezed back. "Anytime you need reminding, call. We're good at normal." The drive home, Riley fell asleep in the back seat before they hit the highway, her new dress wrinkled, her hair falling out of the braids, a smile still on her face. Marcus drove through the twilight, watching the landscape change from rural to suburban to urban, from wealth to working class, from Isabella's world back to his. But something had shifted. The distance between those worlds didn't feel quite as vast as it had that morning. His phone buzzed at a stoplight. A text from Isabella. "Thank you again. Same time next week? Riley can ride Ginger if she wants, and maybe we can talk more. I have some ideas I want to run by you." He glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughter, thought about the life that was opening up in front of them, thought about Jonathan and Sarah and the strange paths grief carved through the world. "We'd love to," he texted back. "See you next week." The light turned green. Marcus drove home through streets he'd driven 1,000 times, but this time they felt different. This time they felt like they were leading somewhere. The following Saturday, Riley was up before the sun again, this time wearing riding boots they'd found at a consignment shop and jeans she'd insisted made her look like a real cowgirl. Marcus had tried to explain that you didn't become a cowgirl in 1 week, but Riley had given him a look that said she disagreed with his entire assessment of how identity worked. They made the drive out to the Hart estate in comfortable silence, broken only by Riley's occasional observations about clouds or birds, or the philosophical implications of why some cows were black and white while others were just brown. Marcus had learned not to engage too deeply with these discussions. They tended to spiral into territory he wasn't equipped to navigate before coffee. Isabella was waiting on the front steps when they pulled up, but she wasn't alone. A woman stood beside her, mid-40s maybe, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of posture that screamed either dancer or military. She wore jeans and boots like Isabella, but there was something more practical about her presentation, less country estate and more working ranch. "Marcus, Riley, this is Carmen Silva. She manages the stables and gives riding lessons." Isabella made the introductions as they approached. "I asked her to come today because I am absolutely not qualified to teach a 7-year-old how to ride, and Carmen's forgotten more about horses than I'll ever know." Carmen extended a hand, her grip firm. "Good to meet you both. Isabella tells me you're eager to learn, Riley." "Yes, ma'am." Riley was vibrating with excitement. "Well, let's not waste time talking about it. Come on." Carmen started toward the stables, and Riley followed like she'd been summoned by a higher power. Marcus hung back with Isabella. "You didn't have to arrange all this." "I wanted to. Carmen's great with kids, and honestly, I wanted to make sure Riley's first experience was good. Bad first lesson can put you off horses for life." She started walking toward the stables. "Besides, it gives us a chance to talk." "About?" "The ideas I mentioned, the ones I've been thinking about all week." They reached the stables where Carmen was already showing Riley how to approach Ginger properly, hand out flat, letting the horse smell her first. Riley was listening with the intense focus she usually reserved for stories about dragons or space. Isabella led Marcus to a bench near the pasture fence, out of earshot but still able to watch. The morning was cool. Autumn fully arrived now, the trees starting to turn colors that looked like fire. "I've been thinking about what you said at the gala," Isabella began, "about scars being proof of survival." "I remember. It made me realize I've been treating mine like a punishment, like something to hide or apologize for, but you're right. It's just proof I lived through something hard." She paused, watching Riley cautiously touch Ginger's neck. "And if that's true for me, it's true for other people too, other survivors." Marcus waited. He'd learned in the Marines that sometimes the best thing you could do was shut up and let people get to their point. "My father's company has resources, money, connections, infrastructure, and I have time and motivation, and apparently a scar that makes me relatable to people who've been through trauma." She turned to look at him directly. "I want to start a foundation, For survivors of accidents, violence, medical trauma, anyone who's been left with visible scars and has to navigate a world that treats them differently because of it. Support groups, therapy funding, scar revision surgery for people who can't afford it, advocacy work. Real help, not just thoughts and prayers. The scope of it hit Marcus like a physical thing. That's ambitious. Is it crazy? No, it's needed, but it's going to take a lot of work. I know. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Isabella shifted on the bench, leaning forward. You're building a veterans outreach program at Hart Industries. You understand what it takes to create infrastructure for people who need support. And you understand what it's like to carry something heavy that other people don't see. Isabella, I'm not asking you to run it. I know you have your job starting, but I need someone who gets it. Someone I can trust to tell me when I'm being naive or when an idea is actually good. Someone who won't treat me like Leonard Hart's damaged daughter trying to find purpose. Her voice had gone sharp on the last part, years of frustration bleeding through. I need a friend who'll be honest. Marcus looked at her, at this young woman who'd been through hell and come out the other side, determined to build something meaningful. And he thought about Jonathan, about how his squad leader used to say that the best thing you could do with pain was turn it into something useful, transform it from weight into fuel. I'll help however I can, he said, but I'm not an expert in nonprofit work or trauma counseling or any of the things you'll actually need. You're an expert in surviving, in rebuilding after loss. That's what I need. She smiled, and the relief in it was palpable. Thank you. Seriously, this means more than you know. From the stable area, Carmen called out, Ready to mount up, Riley? Riley's yes was loud enough to startle birds from nearby trees. They walked over to watch. Carmen had Ginger saddled and was explaining stirrups and reins and posture in language simple enough for a 7-year-old to understand, but thorough enough to be actually useful. Riley absorbed it all like she was preparing for a test that would determine her entire future. You're going to hold here, feet here, back straight. Ginger's going to walk slow. I'll be right beside you the whole time. Carmen helped Riley into the saddle, adjusting stirrups. How's that feel? Amazing! Riley's grin could have powered the eastern seaboard. Carmen led Ginger in a slow walk around the paddock, one hand on the reins, talking Riley through every step. And Marcus watched his daughter, the girl who'd cried herself to sleep for months after Sarah died, who'd been so small and lost and scared, sitting tall on a horse, fearless and happy. Isabella was watching too. She's a natural. She's fearless, doesn't know enough to be scared yet. That's the best way to learn anything. They stood in companionable silence, watching the lesson. After a few circuits, Carmen let Riley hold the reins herself, still walking beside the horse but giving her more control. Riley's concentration was absolute. Her whole world narrowed to the animal beneath her and the instructions Carmen was giving. Can I ask you something? Isabella's voice was quiet. Sure. How do you do it? Raise her alone. Work multiple jobs. Keep going after losing your wife. Where does that strength come from? Marcus had been asked versions of this question before, usually by people who meant well, but didn't really want the honest answer. They wanted something inspirational, something about faith or purpose, or the power of positive thinking. But Isabella wasn't asking for a platitude. She was asking because she needed to know how other people survived. I don't know if it's strength, he said slowly. Most days it feels like momentum. Like I'm moving forward because stopping would mean thinking too hard about everything I lost. And I can't afford to do that because Riley needs me functional. He paused. And some days it's spite. Spite at the universe for taking Sarah. Spite at myself for all the things I did wrong. Spite at the idea that trauma gets to win. That's honest. You asked for honest. I did. Isabella pulled her jacket tighter against the breeze. I've been thinking about spite a lot lately. About how much energy I've spent being angry at the drunk driver who hit us, at the doctors who couldn't fix my face perfectly, at my own reflection. And I'm tired of it. I want to be angry at something productive, at systems that fail people, at stigma that treats visible difference like a character flaw, at the idea that survival isn't enough. You also have to look good doing it. Channel it. That's what Jonathan used to say. Channel everything, anger, fear, grief, into something that matters. Did he do that? Every day. He lost 2 guys in his first deployment, could have let it destroy him. Instead, he made it his mission to bring everyone else home. That's why he died. He was trying to save us. Riley had progressed to a trot now, Carmen jogging beside her, both of them laughing about something. The sound carried across the paddock, pure and uncomplicated. "I wish I'd known him," Isabella said. "He would have liked you. He had a thing about underdogs. People who got dealt bad hands but played them anyway." "Is that what I am? An underdog?" "You're the daughter of a billionaire. That's pretty far from underdog territory. Money doesn't protect you from pain, or loss, or people staring at you like you're a tragedy that ruined their nice evening." Her voice had gone tight. "Sorry, that sounded bitter." "You're allowed to be bitter. That was a terrible night for you." "Until it wasn't. Until you asked me to dance and reminded me I was still a person worth seeing." She turned to face him fully. "I know I keep thanking you, and it probably sounds repetitive, but I need you to understand. That night changed something fundamental for me. It was the first time since the accident that someone looked at me and saw something other than damage." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. The weight of being someone's turning point was heavier than he knew how to carry. The lesson wrapped up with Riley reluctantly dismounting, thanking Carmen approximately 80 times, and immediately asking when she could come back. Carmen laughed and told her any time. She was a joy to teach, which made Riley glow like she'd just been knighted. They walked back to the house together, Riley chattering about the experience in exhaustive detail. How Ginger's mane felt, how high up she'd been, how Carmen said she was a natural rider, how she'd definitely need boots and a helmet if she was going to keep doing this. Could they please get her boots and a helmet? "We'll see," Marcus said, which was parent code for probably not anytime soon because helmets are expensive. Isabella caught his eye, mouthed, "I'll handle it," behind Riley's back. Marcus shook his head firmly. Isabella raised an eyebrow in a look that clearly said, "We'll discuss this later." Inside, Leonard was waiting in the kitchen, reading something on an iPad while coffee brewed. He looked up when they entered, and his smile was genuine. "How was the lesson?" "It was amazing." Riley launched into the story again, complete with dramatic reenactments of mounting the horse and holding the reins. Leonard listened like it was the most fascinating story he'd heard all year. "Sounds like you're well on your way to becoming an equestrian," he said when she paused for breath. "We'll have to get you proper equipment." "Dad," Isabella started, but Leonard waved her off. "She needs a helmet. Safety first. I'll have Carmen order one." He looked at Marcus. "If that's all right with you." It wasn't really a question, and Marcus knew picking a fight over it would just make things awkward. "That's generous, thank you. Consider it an early welcome to the company gift. Speaking of which, are you ready for Monday?" Monday. First day. The thought still made Marcus's stomach flip. "As ready as I'll ever be." "You'll do fine. Jennifer's got your orientation scheduled, and I've asked Tom Chen from HR to show you around, introduce you to the team. They're eager to meet you. Word's gotten around about what you're building." "No pressure or anything," Leonard laughed. "You've faced worse than corporate bureaucracy." "Different kind of pressure, though. In the Marines, if someone was shooting at you, at least you knew where you stood." "True. In business, they smile while they shoot you, more civilized." Leonard poured coffee, offered Marcus a cup. "But you've got something most of them don't. You've got a reason beyond a paycheck. That matters." They spent the afternoon there, falling into an easy rhythm that was starting to feel normal. Riley helped Isabella make cookies, badly, with flour everywhere and chocolate chips eaten at a rate that suggested the final product would be somewhat chip deficient, while Marcus and Leonard talked about the veteran initiative, about logistics and funding, and the political capital required to make real change happen. "The board isn't thrilled," Leonard admitted at one point. "They see it as charity, not business. But I've got enough control to push it through, and the PR value alone justifies the investment. And if it doesn't work, if I can't deliver, then we'll figure out what went wrong and fix it. Marcus, I'm not expecting miracles. I'm expecting honest effort and good intentions. The rest we'll navigate as it comes." Around 4, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Marcus Reed?" Male voice, professional. "Speaking. Well, this is Detective James Morrison, Metro PD. I'm calling about an incident report from 2 weeks ago. The Hart Industries Gala at the Sinclair Hotel. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Marcus's blood went cold. What's this about? We received a complaint from a Mrs. Patricia Pemberton. She alleges you verbally harassed her at the event. I need to get your statement for the record. Isabella had noticed his expression, was watching with concern. Marcus stood, walked toward the window for privacy. Mrs. Pemberton was making cruel comments about another guest. I addressed it. That's all. She claims you threatened her. I did not threaten her. I told her she was being unkind. There's a difference. Multiple witnesses confirm an altercation occurred. An altercation? I spoke to her for maybe 30 seconds. Nobody touched anyone. Nobody raised voices. Marcus could feel his frustration building. Is this actually going anywhere, Detective? Because it sounds like someone's embarrassed they got called out and is trying to rewrite history. I'm just following up on a complaint, Mr. Reed. For the record, can you confirm you were employed as catering staff that evening and that you confronted Mrs. Pemberton about comments she made? Yes, and I'd do it again. Noted. Thank you for your time. The call ended. Marcus stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus? Isabella had approached. What's wrong? The Pembertons filed a police complaint about the gala. Her face went white. What? Detective just called, wanted my statement about harassing Patricia Pemberton. He made air quotes, couldn't help it. Leonard had stood up from the table, was walking over with the purposeful stride of a man about to solve a problem. What detective? What is his name? Morrison, Metro PD. Leonard pulled out his phone, dialed. Jennifer, I need Howard Klein on the line. Now. He waited, eyes hard. Howard, Leonard Hart. I need you to make something disappear. Police complaint against Marcus Reed filed by Patricia Pemberton. Yes, the same Pembertons I had removed from the gala. I want it gone. I don't care what it takes. A pause. Good. Bill me. He hung up, turned to Marcus. Howard Klein is the best lawyer in the city. He'll handle this. Mr. Hart, I can't afford... You're not paying. I am. This is retaliation for embarrassing them. They're trying to hurt you for defending my daughter, and I will burn their entire social circle to the ground before I let that happen. The fury in Leonard's voice was shocking. This wasn't the polished CEO from the gala. This was a father protecting his family, and apparently Marcus had been adopted into that category. Dad, you can't just... Isabella started. I absolutely can. Richard Pemberton sits on 3 boards I control. By Monday morning, he'll sit on 0. Patricia can find out what life looks like when doors start closing. Leonard's phone rang. He answered, listened, then smiled coldly. Excellent. Thank you, Howard. He hung up. Complaints being withdrawn, the Pembertons have been advised that further action would be extremely unwise. Marcus felt like he'd just witnessed a force of nature. That was fast. Money moves fast when you know who to call. Leonard's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, I should have anticipated they might try something like this. They're vindictive people. It's handled now, Isabella said quietly. That's what matters. But Riley had picked up on the tension, was looking between the adults with worried eyes. Is Daddy in trouble? No, sweetheart. Marcus knelt down to her level. Just grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Are the mean people from the party being mean again? Kids. They never missed anything. They tried, but Mr. Hart made sure it stopped. We're okay. Riley processed this, then nodded and went back to the cookies like the crisis had been fully resolved. Adults could learn something from 7-year-olds' ability to move on. The afternoon continued, but the easy mood had been disrupted. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stepped into something bigger than he understood, that the simple act of defending Isabella had opened doors he didn't know existed and brought consequences he hadn't anticipated. When they left around 6, Isabella walked them to the car. Riley was already chattering about next week's writing lesson, completely oblivious to the undercurrents. I'm sorry, Isabella said once Riley was buckled in and distracted by her phone. About the Pembertons, about all of this. Not your fault? It kind of is. If I hadn't been sitting there alone, if my face didn't invite cruelty, if... Stop! Marcus's voice was firm. Don't take responsibility for other people's choices. You didn't make them cruel. You didn't make me defend you, and you definitely didn't make them file a false complaint. Those are their choices, their character. I know, logically I know, but it's hard not to feel like I'm the common denominator in all this drama. You're not drama. You're a person who deserves respect, and some people can't handle that. He paused. Besides, your dad just dismantled their entire social standing in under 5 minutes. I'd say that's pretty clear whose side the universe is on. That got a small smile. He's protective. He loves you. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah. Love sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. Protection just wants to keep you safe in a box where nothing can hurt you. Marcus leaned against his car. Your dad sees you, all of you. The strength, the vulnerability, the person you're becoming. That's love. Isabella's eyes were bright again, but she blinked the tears back. When did you become so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's made enough mistakes to recognize truth when he stumbles across it. Well, you stumble gracefully. She hugged him, quick and tight. Thank you for everything. See you next week? Wouldn't miss it. The drive home was quiet, Riley eventually falling asleep despite her insistence that she was not even a little bit tired. Marcus drove on autopilot, his mind churning through the day. The foundation idea, the writing lesson, the police complaint, Leonard's swift and brutal response. He was in deeper than he'd planned. What had started as one dance at a gala had become something else entirely. A friendship, a job, a connection to people who operated on a completely different level than anything he'd experienced before. And Monday he was going to walk into Hard Industries as an employee. As someone with responsibility and authority and the weight of expectations he wasn't sure he could meet. His phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Isabella. I meant what I said about the foundation. I'm starting the paperwork next week. Can we meet for coffee sometime to talk details? He stared at the message, at the casual way she was asking him to help build something significant, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sure, he texted back. Just let me get through my first week at the new job without embarrassing myself. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You couldn't embarrass yourself if you tried. See you soon. The light turned green. Marcus drove home through streets that had become familiar over 3 years of living in this city. Streets he'd walked when Sarah was sick and he couldn't sleep. Streets he'd driven Riley down on the way to school every morning. Streets that held his life in all its mundane details. But now those streets felt like they were leading somewhere new. Like the path he'd been on, the path of just surviving, just getting through each day, was merging with something bigger. At home, he carried Riley upstairs without waking her, tucked her into bed still in her riding clothes because getting a sleeping 7-year-old into pajamas was a battle he didn't have energy for. He'd deal with it in the morning when she woke up complaining about uncomfortable jeans. In the kitchen, Marcus made coffee he didn't need and sat at the table with his phone, scrolling through the orientation materials Jennifer had sent for Monday. Organizational charts, mission statements, building maps, cafeteria hours, the ordinary infrastructure of corporate life that was about to become his reality. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer. It was nearly 10 p.m., but the number was Leonard's cell. Mr. Hart? I wanted to check in, make sure you're all right after this afternoon. I'm fine. Honestly, thank you for handling that so quickly. It should never have happened. The Pembertons are small people trying to feel big by hurting others. I'm just sorry you got caught in their crossfire. A pause. Marcus, I need you to understand something. You're family now. Not because you work for me, not because you knew Jonathan, because you showed my daughter kindness when the rest of the world was showing her cruelty. That means something to me. It means everything. Marcus's throat went tight. I just did what anyone should have done. But most people didn't. You did. So when I say your family, I mean it. Which means what's mine is yours, lawyers, resources, protection. You don't fight alone anymore, understand? Yes, sir? Good. Now get some sleep. Big day Monday. You too, Mr. Hart. Leonard, call me Leonard. The call ended. Marcus sat in his kitchen in his apartment that would probably always feel too small and too quiet, and let himself feel the full weight of what had just been offered. Family. Protection. A place in a world he'd only ever observed from the outside. It was terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. In her room, Riley was snoring softly, dreaming of horses and princesses, and a future that looked nothing like the one Marcus had imagined when he'd put on that borrowed tuxedo 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. That's all it had been. 14 days since one decision to be kind had changed the trajectory of everything. Marcus finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, turned off the lights. Monday was coming whether he was ready or not. New job, new life, new responsibilities he'd have to figure out how to carry. But tonight, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was strong enough to carry them. And if he wasn't, apparently he had people who would help him learn. That was more than he'd had in a long time. That was more than enough. Monday morning arrived with rain that turned the city gray and made Marcus's commute feel like driving through a watercolor painting someone had left out too long. Riley had been harder than usual to get out the door, sensing his anxiety and responding to it the way kids do, by developing sudden needs for specific socks and a breakfast that absolutely had to include strawberries even though they were out of season and cost more than Marcus wanted to think about. He dropped her at school with promises that, yes, he'd tell her all about his first day, and no, he probably wouldn't meet anyone famous, and yes, she could definitely call him if she needed him, even though she'd never called him from school in her life. "You're nervous," she said, too perceptive. "Little bit." "You'll be great, Daddy. You're always great." She hugged him hard, her small arms fierce around his waist. "Love you." "Love you too, Riley Bear." He watched her run toward the building, her backpack too big for her frame, her shoes lighting up with each step. Then he drove downtown to Hard Industries, to the glass tower that looked even more imposing in the rain, and tried to remember how to be a professional. Security recognized him this time. "Mr. Reed, welcome. Your badge is ready at the desk." "Mas." The badge had his photo from orientation last week, his name in bold letters, and underneath it, Director of Operations, Veteran Outreach Initiative. It felt official in a way that made his hands shake slightly as he clipped it to his jacket. Jennifer was waiting by the elevators, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his car payment. "Good morning, Marcus. Ready for the tour?" "As ready as I'll ever be." She smiled, the kind that said she'd heard that line from every new employee and found it endearing every time. "You'll do fine. Come on, let's get you set up." His office was on the 18th floor, corner space with windows that showed the city and the river beyond it. The desk was real wood, the chair was leather, and there was a bookshelf already stocked with binders labeled with things like HR protocols and veteran services resources and corporate communication guidelines. Your computer login is on the desk, phone extensions are programmed, and Tom Chen from HR will be here at 9 to start your orientation meetings. Jennifer gestured around the space like she was presenting a game show prize. "Questions?" "Yeah, why does this office have windows when I'm pretty sure people with 10 years of seniority are in cubicles?" "Because Leonard Hart wants people to know this initiative matters. Location signals priority." She checked her watch. "I have to run, but if you need anything, my extension is on your phone. Welcome to Hard Industries, Marcus." She left, and Marcus stood alone in an office that was bigger than his living room, looking out at a city where somewhere his daughter was learning multiplication, and somewhere Isabella was probably planning her foundation, and somewhere Leonard was making decisions that affected thousands of lives. And now Marcus was part of it. Somehow. The knock on his door came at exactly 9. Tom Chen was younger than Marcus expected, maybe early 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a tablet he held like it was an extension of his arm. "Marcus Reed? Tom Chen, HR. Heard a lot about you." They shook hands. Tom had a firm grip and direct eye contact, the markers of someone who'd been trained in professional communication and actually paid attention. "All good things, I hope." "The best. Leonard doesn't bring people in at director level without serious vetting. The fact that you served with his brother doesn't hurt, but it's not why you're here. You're here because he thinks you can build something meaningful." Tom sat down in one of the visitor chairs, gestured for Marcus to take the other. "So let's talk about what that actually means." What followed was 3 hours of information that made Marcus's head spin. Organizational structure, reporting hierarchies, budget allocations, hiring protocols, the political landscape of who supported the initiative and who saw it as Leonard's vanity project. Tom delivered it all with efficiency and occasional dry humor that made the medicine go down easier. The board meeting is Thursday, Tom said around 11. You'll be presenting the 6-month roadmap. Leonard wants to show progress, show that you're not just a figurehead. Thursday? This Thursday? Welcome to corporate America. Everything happens faster than you're ready for. Tom pulled up a document on his tablet. I've drafted an outline based on conversations with Leonard. You'll want to customize it, make it yours, but this gives you the framework. Marcus scanned the outline. Recruitment strategies, partnership development with veteran organizations, training program infrastructure, success metrics. It was comprehensive and terrifying. I've never presented to a board before. You've briefed commanding officers, right? Same thing, different uniforms. They want to know the plan, the timeline, and the budget. Keep it tight. Anticipate questions. Don't oversell. These people respect competence, not flash. And if they don't buy it, then Leonard will make them buy it. But it's better if they buy it because you sold it well. Tom stood, extended his hand again. You've got this, Marcus. Leonard doesn't make mistakes about people. If he thinks you can do this, you can. After Tom left, Marcus sat in his office staring at the outline, at the roadmap for something he was supposed to build from nothing. The weight of it pressed down like physical force. His phone rang. Internal line, extension he didn't recognize. Marcus Reed. It's me. Isabella's voice, warm and familiar. How's day one? Overwhelming. How'd you get this number? I asked Jennifer. I'm allowed to call, right? Or is there some corporate protocol about personal calls during business hours? I have no idea what the protocols are. I'm barely keeping my head above water here. Want to have lunch? There's a cafe 2 blocks from your building. I can be there at noon. Marcus checked his schedule. Tom had blocked out the afternoon for independent review of materials, which sounded like code for go panic in private. Yeah, lunch would be good. Text me when you're heading over. See you soon. The cafe was called The Daily Grind, which was either ironic or depressing depending on your mood. Marcus found Isabella at a corner table, dressed in jeans and a sweater that looked casual, but probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. She stood when he approached, hugged him quickly. You look official, very director-like. I look terrified. There's a difference. They ordered sandwiches that were overpriced but actually good, and settled into the kind of conversation that happened when 2 people were becoming real friends instead of just friendly. So I filed the paperwork, Isabella said. The foundation is officially in formation, Heart Foundation for Trauma Survivors and Visible Difference Advocacy. That's a mouthful. I know. I'm workshopping the name, but the structure is solid, the mission statement is clear, and my father's lawyer says we can be operational within 3 months. She paused. I want you on the advisory board. Officially. Isabella, before you say no, hear me out. This isn't charity or nepotism or whatever you're about to claim. I need people who understand what it's like to survive trauma and rebuild. You've done that twice, once after combat, once after losing Sarah. Your perspective is exactly what this needs. Marcus took a bite of his sandwich to buy time. The bread was rosemary focaccia, the chicken was herb marinated, and none of it distracted him from the fact that Isabella was asking him to take on another major responsibility when he was already drowning. I don't know if I have the bandwidth. The job alone is going to consume me for the next few months. I know. That's why I'm asking for your name and your input, not your time. Meet with me once a month. Give me your honest feedback. Let me use your story, anonymously if you want, to help other people understand that rebuilding is possible. Her eyes were intense, pleading. Please, you're the only person I trust to keep this real. Trust. The word hit harder than it should have. Okay, but if I can't deliver, if it becomes too much, you have to let me step back without guilt. Deal. She pulled out her phone, typed something. I'm sending you the preliminary mission statement. Tell me if it sounds too corporate or not corporate enough or whatever. His phone buzzed. He read the document while finishing his sandwich. The language was good, clear, direct, focused on action rather than sentiment. It talked about visibility and advocacy and support without being patronizing or treating survivors like broken things that needed fixing. This is strong. Really strong. You think so? Yeah. It hits the right balance between empathy and empowerment. Isabella's smile was relief and pride mixed together. I must have rewritten it 20 times. Every version either sounded too clinical or too emotional. This one is just right. They talked through the rest of lunch about logistics and strategy, about how to recruit other survivors to share their stories, about partnerships with medical institutions and therapy networks. Isabella had done her research, had thought through the complications, had clearly been working on this non-stop since their conversation on Saturday. "You're serious about this," Marcus said. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life. For 3 years I've been hiding, letting the scar define me, letting other people's discomfort dictate my life. I'm done with that. If I have to carry this mark forever, I'm going to make it mean something." The passion in her voice reminded Marcus of Jonathan, of the way his squad leader used to talk about making a difference, about service being bigger than self-interest. "Your uncle would be proud of you," Marcus said quietly. Isabella's eyes went bright. "You think?" "I know. He believed people were fundamentally good, that the world could be better if enough people tried to make it better. You're trying. That's what matters." "I wish I'd known him. My dad talks about him sometimes, but it's hard for him. Too much grief still there." "Grief doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it differently." "Is that what happened with Sarah? You learned to carry it differently?" Marcus considered the question. Most people didn't ask about Sarah directly. They danced around it, treated his grief like a landmine they didn't want to trigger. But Isabella was asking honestly, without pity, the way you'd ask someone how they survived anything difficult. "Sarah's everywhere and nowhere. Some days I can't remember what her voice sounded like, and that terrifies me. Other days I hear her so clearly in my head that I turn around expecting to see her. Riley has her smile, her laugh. That helps. But it also hurts, watching my daughter grow up looking more like the woman who should be here to see it." He paused. "The grief is just part of the landscape now. I don't fight it anymore. I just acknowledge it and keep moving." "That's brave." "It's survival. There's a difference." "No, I don't think there is. Not really." Isabella finished her coffee. "I should let you get back, but thank you. For lunch, for the feedback, for agreeing to help with the foundation. Thank you for giving me a reason to believe I'm useful for something other than moving boxes." "You were never just moving boxes, Marcus. You were always more than that. You just needed someone to notice." They walked back to the Hard Industries building together, parting in the lobby with promises to coordinate schedules for the first foundation planning meeting. Marcus rode the elevator back to 18, back to his office with the windows and the leather chair, and the overwhelming responsibility of building something meaningful. The afternoon passed in a blur of reading HR manuals and budget projections and partnership proposals. By 4 p.m., Marcus's eyes were crossing and his brain felt like it had been put through a blender. He was considering calling it a day when his door opened without a knock. Leonard Hart walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee and the air of a man who'd just gotten out of a meeting that tried his patience. "You look like you're about to run screaming from the building." "That obvious?" Leonard handed him one of the coffees, sat in the visitor chair. "First day is always brutal. Too much information, too many new faces, the overwhelming certainty that you're in over your head. So it gets better?" "Eventually, or you get better at faking competence. Hard to say which." Leonard sipped his coffee. "Tom said you're presenting Thursday. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Arrogance gets you fired." He leaned back, studied Marcus with the intensity of someone trying to read a language they were still learning. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Why'd you say yes? To all of this? The job, the responsibility, getting involved with my family. You could have just walked away after the gala, taken the moment for what it was and moved on. Why didn't you?" Marcus thought about it. The easy answer was money, stability, opportunity. But Leonard wasn't asking for the easy answer. "Because when Jonathan died, I made myself a promise that I'd live in a way that honored his sacrifice. That meant being the kind of person who didn't walk away when someone needed help, who didn't ignore injustice because it was uncomfortable, who tried to make the world a little less terrible even when it was hard." He met Leonard's eyes. "Your daughter needed someone to see her as human. I couldn't walk away from that. And once I was in, everything else followed." Leonard was quiet for a long moment. "My brother died saving people. You're living to honor him by doing the same thing in a different way. That's not just admirable, Marcus. That's rare. I'm not saving anyone. I'm just showing up. Showing up is 90% of it. The rest is just details. Leonard stood, headed for the door, then paused. You're going to be good at this job. Better than good. But don't let it consume you. Riley needs her father present, not just providing. Balance is important. How do you manage it? The job, Isabella? All the demands on your time? Poorly most days, but I'm trying to do better. Especially now. He smiled, but it was edged with old pain. I lost my wife and almost lost my daughter. Took me too long to realize that all the money and power in the world doesn't matter if the people you love don't feel loved. Don't make my mistakes, Marcus. After Leonard left, Marcus sat with that advice, with the coffee that was getting cold and the silence of an office that was his now. Officially, for real. Somewhere in the building, hundreds of people were working on things that mattered to them, pursuing careers and ambitions and lives he'd never know about. And now he was one of them, part of the machinery of corporate America, trying to build something good inside a system designed primarily for profit. The contradiction didn't escape him. His phone buzzed. Text from Riley, sent from Mrs. Chen's phone. How was your first day? Did you get an office? Is it cool? He smiled, typed back. It was good. Yes, I have an office. It has windows and everything. How was school? Boring. But Maya did fall off the monkey bars and she's okay, but she cried a lot. Can we have tacos for dinner? Sure, I'll pick you up at 6. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, Riley Bear. The rest of the week passed in controlled chaos. Tuesday was meetings with potential partner organizations, veteran nonprofits that eyed Marcus with cautious optimism tinged with skepticism. Corporate initiatives tended to be heavy on PR and light on substance, and they'd been burned before. Wednesday was budget reviews that made his head hurt, trying to understand line items and allocation strategies and why office supplies apparently cost more than his monthly rent. Thursday was the board presentation. Marcus had rehearsed it with Tom, with Jennifer, with Leonard during a late-night session where the CEO had torn apart his slides and rebuilt them into something clearer, tighter, more defensible. By Thursday morning, Marcus could recite the presentation in his sleep, which was good because he'd barely slept. The boardroom was on the 22nd floor, all glass and leather, and the kind of furniture that whispered money in 12 different languages. 15 board members, most of them men in their 50s and 60s, a few women who looked like they'd fought tooth and nail for their seats and weren't about to give them up easily. Leonard made the introduction. This is Marcus Reed, director of our Veteran Outreach Initiative. He'll be presenting our 6-month roadmap. Marcus served with my brother in Afghanistan, and I trust him completely. I expect the same from all of you. The temperature in the room shifted. Some of the faces softened. Leonard trusting someone meant something. Others hardened. Nepotism and sentimentality were weak foundations for business decisions. Marcus stood, pulled up his slides, and started talking. He laid out the plan the way he'd brief a mission. Objective, strategy, tactics, metrics for success. He anticipated questions and answered them before they were asked. He presented data on veteran unemployment, on the skills gap that kept qualified people from good jobs, on the competitive advantage companies gained by hiring people who understood discipline and teamwork and operating under pressure. 15 minutes in, a woman in a navy suit interrupted. This all sounds lovely, Mr. Reed, but what's the return on investment? How does spending millions on veteran hiring benefit our shareholders? Marcus had known this was coming. Tom had warned him. Leonard had coached him. But standing there looking at a room full of people who measured human worth in quarterly earnings, he felt something shift inside him. The ROI is that you'll have employees who won't quit when things get hard, who'll show up on time, follow procedures, and understand chain of command, who'll be loyal because you gave them a chance when most companies wouldn't. He paused. And you'll have a workforce that actually reflects the values this company claims to care about: service, integrity, community. Or are those just words on the website? The room went very quiet. Leonard was watching him with an expression Marcus couldn't read. The woman in the navy suit raised an eyebrow. That's bold, Mr. Reed. It's honest, ma'am. You asked for ROI. I'm telling you that investing in people who've already proven themselves under fire is the best investment this company could make. The numbers back it up. But if you want to reduce human beings to line items, I can do that too. He went through the financial projections Tom had helped him build. Lower turnover rates, reduced training costs, tax incentives for veteran hiring, positive PR value that translated to brand strength and customer loyalty. The numbers were good. Really good. By the time he finished, 45 minutes had passed, and he'd answered every question they threw at him. Some hostile, some genuinely curious, all of them probing for weakness. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," the chairman said finally. "We'll take this under advisement," which was board speak for, "We'll argue about it after you leave." Leonard walked him to the elevator. "You did well. I called them out on their hypocrisy. Pretty sure that's not how you win board votes. You spoke truth to power. Some of them will respect that. The ones who don't weren't going to support this anyway." He pressed the button for Marcus's floor. "The vote will pass. I'll make sure of it. But you made it easier by showing them you're not going to roll over and give them whatever they want." "I probably should have been more diplomatic. Diplomacy is overrated. Jonathan never had any, and he was the best man I knew." The elevator arrived. "Go home, Marcus. Spend the evening with Riley. You've earned it." Marcus did exactly that. Picked up Riley from Mrs. Chen's, took her to the taco place she loved, listened to her talk about school and friends, and the complex social dynamics of second grade that apparently rivaled anything he'd faced in the Marines. After dinner, they walked to the park even though it was getting dark, pushed her on the swings until his arms ached, then went home and watched a movie about a girl who saved her island through determination and questionable navigational choices. Riley fell asleep on the couch before the credits rolled. Marcus carried her to bed, tucked her in, stood in the doorway watching her breathe the way he'd done every night since Sarah died, making sure she was real, making sure she was okay, making sure he hadn't failed at the one job that actually mattered. His phone buzzed. Text from Leonard. "Board vote was unanimous. Initiative is fully funded. Well done." Marcus sat on the couch in the dark, in his apartment that was still too small and too quiet, but was home, and let himself feel the full weight of what had just happened. He'd done it, actually done it. A week ago, he'd been terrified of the board presentation. Now it was over, successful, and the real work was about to begin. The real work of building something that would help people who needed it. The real work of proving Leonard's faith in him wasn't misplaced. The real work of being the kind of person Jonathan would be proud to call friend. Friday morning, Marcus woke up early and made pancakes in the shape of horses, badly, with too much butter and questionable geometry. But Riley loved them anyway. She was going to Isabella's after school for another writing lesson, this time with a helmet that had arrived via overnight delivery because apparently when Leonard Hart decided you needed safety equipment, it materialized immediately. Marcus dropped her at school, drove to work, rode the elevator to his office with the windows in the view, and started the next phase. Hiring staff, scheduling recruitment events, finalizing partnerships with veteran organizations. The work was endless and overwhelming and more satisfying than anything he'd done in years. Around 10, his office phone rang. Jennifer's voice, professional but warm. "Marcus, there's someone here to see you. A Maria Santos? She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about the veteran initiative." "Send her up." Maria Santos was in her early 30s, with dark eyes and the controlled posture of someone who'd served. She wore jeans and a jacket that had seen better days, and she carried a folder like it held something precious. "Mr. Reed? I'm Maria Santos, former Army medic. I heard Hart Industries was hiring veterans and I wanted to—" She stopped, looking around the office. "I'm sorry, am I in the right place? I was expecting HR or something." "You're in the right place. I run the program. Have a seat." Marcus gestured to the visitor chairs. "Tell me about yourself." What followed was a story he'd heard variations of 100 times. Good service record, honorable discharge, struggled to find work that valued her skills, took whatever job she could get, retail, food service, gig economy work, that paid bills but offered no future. She had emergency medical training that would be valuable in any corporate environment, crisis management skills that transferred to high-pressure situations, and nobody would hire her because her resume had gaps and her experience didn't translate to civilian keywords. "I can learn anything," Maria said, and there was desperation in it. "I just need someone to give me a chance." Marcus thought about Pete at the warehouse, about the supervisor who'd hired him despite his resume gaps, about how one person believing in you could change everything. What if I told you we have positions opening in our facilities management division? They need people who can handle emergency situations, make quick decisions, coordinate responses to problems. Your medic training is exactly what they're looking for. Maria's eyes went wide. Seriously? Seriously. It won't be glamorous. The pay is decent, but not amazing to start. But there's room for advancement, full benefits, and you'd be working with other veterans. Interested? Yes? Absolutely yes. Marcus pulled out the intake forms Tom had given him, walked Maria through the application process. By the time she left, she had an interview scheduled with the facilities director for next week, an actual hope in her eyes that hadn't been there when she walked in. After she left, Marcus sat at his desk and let himself feel it. This was why he was here. Not for the salary or the office or the status. For this, the ability to change someone's trajectory with one decision to see them as capable instead of risky. The rest of the day brought 3 more walk-ins, 2 phone inquiries, and an email from a veteran nonprofit asking about partnership opportunities. Word was spreading faster than Marcus had anticipated. By 5 p.m., he had a stack of applications and a growing sense that he'd underestimated how much demand there was for this. He left the office feeling both exhausted and energized, drove to Isabella's estate to pick up Riley, found his daughter in the stable with Carmen and Isabella, grooming Ginger like she'd been doing it her whole life. "Daddy, look! I can do the hooves now!" Riley was holding Ginger's front leg up, carefully cleaning the hoof with a pick under Carmen's supervision. "I see that. Very impressive." Isabella walked over smiling. "She's a natural. Carmen says she's never seen a kid take to it this fast." "She's probably exaggerating to be nice." "She's really not. Riley has good instincts with animals, gentle but confident. That's rare." They watched Riley finish grooming, then ride Ginger around the paddock with increasing confidence. The week's stress fell away watching his daughter discover something she loved, something she was good at, something that made her happy in a way that was pure and uncomplicated. After the lesson, Isabella invited them for dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, and they ate on the patio as the sun set behind the trees. Riley talked nonstop about the riding lesson, about school, about the foundation Isabella was building, and how she thought they should have a mascot, and maybe the mascot could be a horse. "That's actually not a terrible idea," Isabella said. "Horses represent strength and grace. They carry scars from work and life, but they're still beautiful, still powerful." "See, Daddy, I'm good at ideas." "You are, baby. Very good." After dinner, Riley crashed on Isabella's couch watching a movie, exhausted from the riding and the week and the constant forward motion of being 7. Marcus and Isabella sat on the patio, coffee in hand, watching the last light fade from the sky. "I met my first applicant today," Marcus said. "Maria Santos, Army medic. Good person who just needed someone to believe in her." "Did you hire her?" "Set her up with an interview if it goes well, yes." "That's wonderful." It felt good, really good, like maybe I'm actually qualified to do this job. Isabella turned to look at him. "Marcus, you were always qualified. You just needed to believe it." Leonard said something similar, about showing up being 90% of it. "He's right. My dad's right about a lot of things, actually, when he's not being overprotective or trying to solve my problems for me." She paused. "He told me about the board vote, said you were fearless." "I wasn't fearless. I was terrified. But I figured if I was going to fail, I might as well fail while speaking the truth. And instead you succeeded. Funny how that works." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that happens when 2 people don't need to fill every moment with words. In the house, Riley's laughter filtered through the screen door, watching something that struck her as hilarious. "She's happy," Isabella said softly. "Your daughter, really happy." "She is, finally. For a while there after Sarah, I wasn't sure she'd ever be happy again." "What changed?" "Time, therapy, a 7-year-old's resilience that puts adults to shame, and honestly, you. This place, the horses, having somewhere to go that feels special. It's given her something to look forward to. She's given me something too, a reason to be present instead of hiding. A reminder that life is happening now, not someday when my face is fixed or when people stop staring or when whatever impossible condition I set is finally met." Marcus understood that completely. The tendency to postpone living until circumstances were perfect, until you were healed enough, fixed enough, ready enough. Jonathan used to say you can't wait for the perfect moment. You just have to choose the moment you're in and make it matter. He sounds like he was an incredible person. He was. Flawed, human, made mistakes, but incredible. Isabella leaned back in her chair, looking up at stars that were starting to appear. I think you're incredible too, Marcus Reed. I hope you know that. The words settled into him, found a place next to all the other kindnesses people had shown him over the years. Riley's unconditional love, Sarah's belief in him, Leonard's trust, Jonathan's friendship, all of it adding up to a foundation he was finally learning to stand on without questioning whether it would hold. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing me, for trusting me, for letting us be part of your life. Thank you for the same, for being brave enough to dance with a stranger, for showing me that scars don't define worth, for being exactly who you are without apology. Inside, the movie had ended and Riley was calling for her dad. Time to go home, school tomorrow. Marcus stood, helped Isabella clear the coffee cups, gathered his daughter who was half asleep and wholly content. The drive home was quiet, Riley dozing in the back seat, the city lights streaming past like possibilities made physical. At home, Marcus carried Riley upstairs, tucked her in without waking her, stood in the doorway one more time watching her breathe. In the kitchen, he opened his laptop and started drafting the implementation plan for the Veteran Initiative. 30 pages of strategy and tactics and timelines that would become real over the next 6 months. It was overwhelming and exciting, and exactly the kind of challenge he needed. Around midnight, he saved the document, closed the laptop, and allowed himself to believe something he hadn't believed in a long time, that maybe he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That maybe the hard years, the loss, the struggle, all of it had been preparing him for this. That maybe purpose wasn't something you found. It was something you built, one choice at a time, one person at a time, one moment of courage at a time. And standing in his kitchen, in his too small apartment with his sleeping daughter down the hall, and a job that mattered waiting for him tomorrow, Marcus Reed felt something he hadn't felt since before Sarah got sick. He felt whole, not healed, not perfect, but whole. And that was more than enough. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning that felt like spring had arrived early, Marcus stood in the Hart Estate Gardens watching Isabella cut the ribbon on the Foundation's first community center. The building wasn't huge, a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that had seen better decades, but it was theirs. Support group space, therapy rooms, a resource center staffed by people who understood what it meant to carry visible reminders of trauma. Riley was there, holding the other end of the ribbon, taking her ceremonial duties very seriously. Leonard stood to the side with a smile that looked less like the CEO and more like the father who'd finally figured out what mattered. I can't believe we actually did this, Isabella said quietly, scissors poised. You did this, Marcus corrected. I just told you when your ideas were terrible. Which was never. Which was at least 4 times. She laughed, cut the ribbon, and the small crowd gathered, survivors, volunteers, donors who'd believed in the vision, erupted in applause. Riley threw her piece of ribbon in the air like confetti, which wasn't protocol but perfectly captured the moment's spirit. Inside, they gave tours, showed off the art therapy room, the meditation space, the resource library filled with books about healing that didn't treat trauma like something to overcome and forget. Maria Santos was there, now working full-time in Hart Industries facilities management and volunteering evenings at the center. She'd brought 3 other veterans with her, people she'd met through the initiative who were finding their footing again. This is because of you, Maria told Marcus during a quiet moment. All of this. You gave me a chance. I got stable, and now I can help others. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work, Marcus agreed. Pay it forward. Leonard found him an hour later, pulled him aside. I have something for you. Call it a 3-month review bonus. He handed Marcus an envelope. Inside was a check that made Marcus's vision blur. Mr. Hart, I can't... Leonard. And yes, you can. You've hired 47 veterans in 3 months. Retention rate is 96%. You've built partnerships with 15 organizations. You've done in 12 weeks what I expected to take a year. He paused. That money isn't charity. It's earned. Use it however you want. Down payment on a house, college fund for Riley, whatever makes sense for your family. Marcus looked at the check again. Enough to change things. Enough to give Riley the kind of stability he'd been chasing since Sarah died. Thank you, seriously. This means everything. You've earned it. And Marcus, your family. Stop being surprised when we treat you like it. By afternoon, the crowd had thinned, and Riley was showing a group of younger kids how to properly approach Ginger, using all the knowledge Carmen had drilled into her over months of lessons. She was confident, careful, kind, everything Marcus had hoped she'd become. Isabella appeared beside him. She's incredible. You know that, right? I know I got lucky. She's better than I deserve. Stop that. You're a great father. Own it. They walked toward the stable together, watching Riley and the other kids. The spring air smelled like flowers and possibility, the kind of day that felt like the universe was cooperating for once. I've been thinking, Isabella said, about next steps for the foundation. We need satellite locations, more cities. The demand is already bigger than we can handle. That's a good problem to have. It is, but it means I need to be more visible. Do interviews, public speaking, advocacy work. Put my face out there and let people see the scar and hear the story. Marcus heard the fear underneath the determination. You're ready for that. Am I? You wouldn't be considering it if you weren't. He stopped walking, turned to face her. 3 months ago, you were hiding in your father's house. Now you're running a foundation and planning expansion. That's not accident. That's growth. Because you showed me it was possible. You and Riley. You didn't treat me like I was broken. You were never broken, just hurt. There's a difference. Isabella smiled, and the scar that had once dominated her face was just part of her now. One feature among many, not the defining characteristic, but not hidden either. Just present, just real. Thank you, Marcus, for everything, for that dance, for your honesty, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for giving me a place to land when I didn't know I was falling. Riley ran over, breathless and happy. Daddy, can Maya come over tomorrow? Her mom said it's okay if it's okay with you and we want to make friendship bracelets. Sure, baby. Sounds good. Yes! She hugged him hard, then ran back to the other kids, already planning the bracelet designs in elaborate detail. Leonard joined them, watched his granddaughter in spirit with obvious affection. She calls me Grandpa Leonard now. Did you know that? Marcus hadn't. When did that start? 2 weeks ago. Just announced it like it was fact. I didn't correct her. I should have asked you first. Don't. It's an honor. Leonard's voice went rough. I lost my brother, lost my wife, almost lost my daughter to isolation and pain, but I gained you too. That's not nothing. That's everything. The afternoon faded into evening, the celebration winding down, people heading home with full hearts and concrete hope that things could be better. Marcus loaded Riley into the car. His car. Not the beat-up Honda, but something newer, safer, purchased with his first paycheck because his daughter deserved reliability, and drove toward their apartment. Except it wasn't their apartment anymore. Not as of next week. The house was small, 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood with good schools and a yard where Riley could play. Nothing fancy, nothing like the Hart estate, but theirs. Owned, not rented. Stable. Daddy, are you crying? Riley asked from the back seat. Little bit. Happy crying or sad crying? Happy, baby. Very happy. At home, he tucked Riley in and stood in the doorway like always, watching her breathe, counting blessings. His phone buzzed. Text from Isabella. Thank you for today. For all the days. You changed my life. He typed back. You changed mine too. We're even. Never even. Always grateful. Marcus smiled, pocketed his phone, walked to the kitchen where Sarah's picture still sat on the counter. He looked at her face, at the woman who'd believed in him when he'd barely believed in himself. We're okay, he told her photograph. Riley's okay. I'm okay. I think you'd be proud of us. The picture didn't answer, but somehow that was okay too. Sarah was gone, would always be gone, and the grief would always be there. But so would the love, so would the memories. So would the strength she'd given him to keep going when stopping would have been easier. He thought about Jonathan, about the squad leader who'd died saving others, about how one person's courage could echo through years and lives, and change trajectories in ways they'd never see. He thought about Isabella, about a young woman who turned pain into purpose, scars into strength, isolation into connection. He thought about Riley, about his daughter who'd survived loss and come out the other side still capable of joy, still believing the world was fundamentally good. And he thought about himself, about a man who'd asked a stranger to dance and somehow found his way home. In 2 weeks, Hart Industries would host another gala. This time, Marcus would attend as a guest, not staff. Isabella would be there too, speaking about the foundation, showing her face without apology, telling her story without shame. Riley would stay with Mrs. Chen and probably convince her to let her stay up past bedtime. Life would continue, imperfect and complicated and occasionally painful. There would be hard days and setbacks and moments when the weight of responsibility felt crushing. But there would also be this: quiet Saturday evenings in apartments that were becoming houses, daughters who called people family because love mattered more than blood, foundations built on the simple, radical idea that everyone deserved to be seen. Marcus turned off the kitchen light, checked the locks, headed toward his own room. Tomorrow was Sunday. He'd take Riley to the park, maybe stop by Isabella's for lunch, definitely avoid thinking about the presentation he had scheduled for Tuesday. Tomorrow was Sunday, and it would be good. But tonight was enough. Tonight was more than enough. Tonight, Marcus Reed stood in a life he'd built from wreckage and let himself believe what Jonathan had always known, that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was choosing kindness anyway. That scars prove survival, not failure. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was reach out your hand and ask someone to dance. The apartment was quiet. Riley was sleeping. The city hummed outside, and Marcus finally was home.